Welcome to the Aesthetic Doctor Podcast. We don't shy away and keep secrets here. We empower you with education, telling you the truth about all things aesthetic medicine while encouraging you to be the best version of yourself. It's time to look great and feel good doing it. This is your host, mom, speaker, and board-certified physician, Dr. Judith Forger.
Hello, friends. This is Dr. Borger, and welcome to episode 75 of the Aesthetic Doctor Podcast. Today, I have the immense pleasure of having Dr. Laura Suttin with me. Dr. Suttin is a family physician, a certified coach, a consultant, an author, a speaker, and an entrepreneur. She coaches at Purposeful MD, where her mission is to empower physicians and other healthcare professionals to create the lives they love without guilt. She also hosts the wonderful podcast, the Purposeful MD podcast, as well as she recently published her own first book, which is called The Purposeful MD, Creating the Life You Love Without Guilt. It is so amazing to have Dr. Suttin here. Please join me as we welcome her to talk about her book, her ventures, and all of the wonderful things she has to share to help you make your life the most purposeful and happy it can be. Thank you so much, Laura, for being here. For all of you who, obviously you heard my introduction, Dr. Suttin just published a wonderful book. I have actually followed her in the online world for a couple of years now. I absolutely love her work, and we'll talk about her podcast later, but what she does really well on her podcast is, I think, take coaching concepts and really clarify them into beautiful, succinct, bite-sized chunks. So I think that's definitely a superpower of yours, to really take a concept and in your 8, 10, 15-minute little episodes you have on concepts, really get so clear on them. But anyway, what I was going to say is that I finally had the pleasure of meeting her in person at an entrepreneurship conference we were both in Dallas. So I'm really glad we're in real life friends. And I'm just so happy that you're here to share all your wisdom and knowledge with our listeners.
Thank you so much. Wow, that was very flattering. Thank you for all of that. It's so great to be with you. And yeah, it was so nice to meet you in person at PMDCon.
Yes, already obviously said all the things about you in the introduction, the book. I love that you brought out your book, The Purposeful MD, Creating the Life You Love Without Guilt. Would you just tell us what prompted you to write the book, and how did you go from being a physician to coaching to authorship, really?
Yeah, I'll start with that journey. So I am a family physician, and like a lot of family physicians out of residency, joined a private practice. My private practice, after a couple of years, then was sold to a larger medical group within my metropolitan area. So I was basically staying at the same office, but now was part of a bigger system. And as part of that, my practice shifted a little bit, and I was given some opportunities to do leadership within the organization. And so part of that was doing some mentoring and informal coaching, looking at physician engagement, physician wellness, which was kind of a relatively, at least in my world, was a relatively new concept 15, 20 years ago. And so I really enjoyed that aspect of my job, working one-on-one with physicians. I tended to be the one that physicians would come to if they had just had questions or just wanted to talk things out. And about 5 years ago, a colleague of mine told me that she was going to get a coaching certification. And I didn't realize that was a thing. And I loved school. Clearly, I went through medical school, also got my MBA. So the idea of a formal training program for coaching was really attractive to me. So in 2020, I started my coaching path and finished that in 2021, my coaching certification through the Physician Coaching Institute. And I was doing coaching within my company and also started my business at the same time, Purposeful MD. So coaching internally, physicians and nurse practitioners and physician assistants, and then my side gig, my business at the time. And then earlier this year, about 6 months ago, I left my job full time, left my clinical practice and the roles I was doing at my organization. And now I'm coaching full time and I love it. I love being an entrepreneur. I love my business. I love coaching. I just wrapped up a coaching session with a client. So I'm a little bit on a high because anytime I can coach and serve other physicians, I'm just super excited. So that's my coaching path. I do one-on-one and group coaching. As far as my author path, I started doing some internal blogging probably about 2 or 3 years ago. Actually, the first time that I sat down to write an article was for Kevin MD. And what prompted it was in Texas, I live in South Texas, and we had this massive ice storm a few years ago that I think was made national headlines. And I wrote about my experience with that and how that being without power for a few days and a lot of the things that came along with that, how that shaped how I view rest and what it means for us to really take care of ourselves. Because during that time, we didn't have heat, we didn't have power, we didn't have hot water, all these things that you really just take for granted, but we had to slow down. We had to take care of ourselves. And that was really my first experience with that kind of an event. And so I wrote about that on Kevin MD, got some good feedback on it, and just realized I really enjoyed it. So started doing some internal blogging within my company, and again, got some great feedback on it, realized how much I enjoyed it, and then remembered that I used to write fiction short stories when I was a kid, and that was an outlet for me. So I thought maybe this is something I could start doing more regularly, turn it into a book. And a friend of mine who is another coach had written a book through a writing coach and publisher, and so introduced me down that pathway. And so here we are. My book was published in October of this year, and I am really excited to just have it and hold it in my hands. And that process of the unboxing and the seeing it on Amazon and seeing it online is it's an incredible feeling. And I feel like almost every day I'm having somebody reach out to me and telling me that they read my book and that it was helpful and impactful and changed how they saw things. And so that just makes my heart happy.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And it reminded me of something like today. That's why I do my podcast, right? Because I too was the kid that would, when we went on vacations, and again, of course, this was not the age of technology, I used to just ask for notebooks because I wrote stories. I would write stories, and by my parents' admission, they were very critical, but also biased, of course. They were very good stories. But like that was the thing I used to do. I just remember sitting on summer vacation and being in my little fantasy world and just writing notebooks full of stories. So first of all, I love that connects us, but I think that is such an important like coaching moment here too, to as you discover your own path of wellness. Like I recorded an episode that's called Do What Sets Your Soul on Fire. And it's also what Martha Beck and Liz Gilbert call enchantment. Find those simple things that just used to bring you joy just for joy's sake and do them. And then of course, if it can majorly impact people and help the world and help others, that's such a bonus. But just this idea of the soul loves what the soul loves.
Yes, I could not agree more. I could not agree more. And the more of us who find what lights us up or rediscover what lights us up and put that out into the world, then the world would just be such a better place.
It would be such a better place. So the Purposeful MD, tell me how you came up with that name, because it's a great name.
Yeah, thank you. It's a little bit maybe by chance, but I remember sitting online at in one of my coaching courses when I was nearing the end of my certification, talking about how to build a business, how to get it going. And our teacher, who was also a physician coach, she was really just talking us through find the words that speak to you. And so we were doing some kind of free expression writing, and the word purposeful came up for me. And I thought that really that speaks to me. I'm the Purposeful MD, and I want my physician clients to be purposeful as well. So Google search found that nobody was using it. So I registered it that day, took it, and now it's mine. And I think that's how I try to live my life, with purpose, and kind of similar to what we were talking about, when we are able to find our purpose and live out our purpose, whatever that is, whether that's through patient care, clinical work, entrepreneurship, hobbies, parenthood, whatever that looks like, then we just shine in a way that makes us unstoppable.
What do you say to the people that feel like purpose is such a heavy word? Does that make sense? Because when you say purpose, it seems like full of joy. I think I just want to bring this up not to question you, but I feel like sometimes people feel, oh, purpose, this is so heavy. It's, I have to change the world. I have to leave a legacy.
Yeah.
I have to already know it. What if I don't know it yet?
Right. Yeah. I was just working with somebody this morning. We were having this conversation. And I think, especially, and I know I'm generalizing here, but especially as women, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves that we have to do everything right. We have to be the perfect mom or stepmom or aunt or whatever that looks like. If we're physicians, be the perfect physician, perfect daughter, all of those things. And we can really put that pressure on ourselves. We can also have the sense that we don't get to have fun or bring joy or pleasure into our lives. But what if that is our purpose? And so I was working with a client this morning who was talking about how much she enjoyed singing when she was younger, and her face just lit up. Her whole energy shifted when she was talking about how much she enjoyed singing. And maybe singing isn't her purpose, but how can she get back to that, doing something that she loves, so that it fills her cup enough so that she can then do the things that she either needs to do or wants to do in life, so that so that she's not feeling miserable all the time. So I think purpose, yes, it can be this sense of responsibility, but I also really truly feel that those are way more aligned than we ever think. Our responsibility to the world is to find our purpose, is to bring joy into the world. And when we do that, then beautiful things can happen. And we attract people that we maybe never would have attracted. We attract opportunities. The universe starts to align to meet our needs. And so, yeah, it's never felt heavy to me. And I think having a conversation with somebody who feels that way would be interesting to just maybe ask ourselves, why does it feel heavy? And is there something, that sense of obligation that's there? Yeah, I think, again, I just think that when we can align our hearts and our minds and our bodies together, then beautiful things happen.
Yeah, and that's your definition of purpose, right? So again, I think some of it also comes down to your definition of purpose. And I love, that's why I asked you about it, because I think your
Yeah.
definition is beautiful. That alignment of your heart, your soul, your everything, and the joy in yourself with the joy of the world, with the well-being in the world. Versus, again, I think the limiting belief probably is then the simple definition of purpose, that it has to be heavy, that it has to be self-sacrificing, that it has to be martyrdom, like, right?
Right.
Which again, I think a lot of us, and that is truly wellness, is that your own wellness matters as much, if not more, than the wellness of everybody else.
Yes, absolutely.
And really, that's one of the things your book is really about, the creating the life you love without guilt. What are some of the sort of key takeaways or promises that you share in the book with listeners?
Yeah. So I talk about it a lot from the perspective of a female physician. And again, I know this is a generalization, but just the pressures that we put on ourselves, and that also society puts on us as women professionals who maybe we have young kids, maybe we're also taking care of parents who are becoming less and less dependent, or less and less independent. And then we have full-time jobs, whatever that looks like, just a lot of the societal pressures that we have, external or internal, just so we can recognize it. And again, it's going to take generations to see that shift. And I'm already starting to see it shift in my daughter's generation, which is great. They're just not really putting up with some of the things that we put up with. And then we're not putting up with things that our mothers and grandmothers put up with, for sure. So recognizing the reality, recognizing that we don't have to accept the status quo, that we can truly create the life that we want for ourselves. And it's very small steps. So we have to start with, what are your values? That's one of the things I talk about in the beginning of the book, is understanding what your values are, because when we know what our core values are, we don't have to keep asking ourselves every single time to choose between this activity, this path, or this path. Our values are the foundation that are going to help direct us, and we can reduce a lot of that decision fatigue. We don't have to stop and really wonder about what our path is when we know what our values are. And our can shift over time, but I walk through an exercise in the book about how to define your core values so that when there are conflicts that come up, and there are, and I don't know when this episode's going to come out, but we're coming up in the holidays, and I'm already hearing this from my clients about all these family obligations and work and school and all of these different things. So that's something that we also have to accept, is that we don't have time to do everything in this world. We can't do all the things. So how do we make better decisions and make decisions that align with us when those conflicts arise? And knowing our values is really critical to that. So an example of that for me right now is I have a daughter who's a senior in high school. And because she's probably going to go off to a college that is nowhere near home, I am making choices in the next year that align with my being able to prioritize her and spend time with her. That means that I'm going to have to say no to other things when conflicts arise about, do I prioritize this time with her, this activity with her over doing something else? Then that means that I make an effort, make that priority for her. So next year that might look different. When she was younger, it definitely looked different. So those values can shift over time, but that's really one of the core things. And then the without guilt part, I think, is really interesting too. And it's not that we never feel guilt about anything, but we can recognize when that guilt is coming up. We can ask ourselves, is this really truly something to feel guilty for? I had a coach tell me once, guilt is for criminals. And I just, yeah, it's funny. It's hilarious. I thought, that's really true. I'm feeling guilty about this, whatever thing I'm feeling guilty for. And I really, truly don't have anything to feel guilty for. Where is that guilty voice coming from? A lot of times that guilty voice is coming from a time in our life when we had to sacrifice ourselves in order to stay safe. So maybe we were in a situation when we were growing up where we couldn't express our emotions in a way that was safe. Or maybe we're clinicians and we were trained in an environment where we couldn't express our emotions safely. So we have this protective mechanism that we needed to get us through those times, but that protective mechanism isn't serving us anymore. And so how can we really take a look at that and just get really clear on where's that guilt coming from? Is it serving us? And if it's not, then how do we break free from that? So I know that was a lot, but those are some of the things that I talk about in the book.
I love it. And I could not agree more. And I love that you brought up the whole core values. And I really recommend people, if they don't know what their core values are, do the exercise in Laura's book, buy the book, do the exercise, because I always feel like, seeing that I know my core values, and I actually sometimes take people through a similar experience, it's almost like it makes it very an easy yes or no. Does this align with my core values? Yes or no. It's really as simple as a yes or no, and it takes away some of that mind drama that really goes on, because a lot of what you were talking about, the guilt, it's like mind drama. It's some voice from like a different time, or your most critical aunt, or the boyfriend that dumped you, or somebody telling you things about yourself that probably aren't even true. So I do love that you start with core values, you end without guilt, because even though I don't love the phrase mom guilt, I think all of us have felt it in some way or another. And it is, I don't know who it is, let's just call it they, society, our own expectations, our own perfectionism, all the stuff like telling us like how we should feel. And you brought up the holidays. This episode will come out way before the holidays. What are some of the tips and tricks you might have for listeners to surviving the holidays without heaps and heaps of that guilt as a side to their favorite Christmas trimming?
Yeah. So one of the things that's been really helpful is, and again, depending on family situation, whatever this looks like, is really getting clear for yourself, what do you want your holidays to look like? And what type of feeling do you want to have in your home for whatever holiday you're celebrating? And so getting just very clear, sit with yourself, close your eyes, picture it, get really clear on what you want your home to look like, who you want to be there, what do you want to be going on? Do you want to be in your home? Do you want to be somewhere else? Where do you see yourself lighting up over the holidays? And getting very clear on that. And then really getting the family aligned on that, whatever the family unit looks like, whoever the people in your life that you celebrate the holidays with. And if they're not in alignment with your vision for the holidays, then you might have to work a little bit differently to create that for yourself. But getting really clear on what's important to you this holiday season. And so maybe that's travel. I've talked to friends and family and colleagues and clients who they travel for the holidays, or they stay home, but they go to a restaurant, or whatever that looks like. But getting really clear on what you want out of this holiday season, whether that's rest and rejuvenation, whether that's time with family, whether that's adventure, being really clear for yourself and then creating that for yourself, because no one is going to do it for you.
Especially if you don't tell them. I think
Especially
that's
if you
the
don't
other
tell
thing.
them,
We
right?
think that just because we have been in a relationship with people, whether that is through birth or marriage or commitment or
Mhm.
friendship, that just because they know us, they now need to know every one of our fleeting desires. And I
Right.
think it is one of the things that has really helped me, is to actually clearly and without and as calmly and objectively as often state your needs. That
Yeah.
does not mean, again, they have their own choices and they can make their own choices. But you talk about your adult son. I took my son and his friend, and my son has graduated college, on a cruise. And I said to them, I said, listen, the one thing that's really important for me is that I would like us to have dinner together every night. And that was really what I wanted. But just to be able to say, this is a priority for me, it was very easy for them to be like, okay, mom, when are we having dinner?
Yeah.
Versus not saying it, and then they're going to get pizza, and I'm hurt because they're not doing dinner with me. But they might have literally just had no idea that was the one thing that I
Yes.
really wanted. And I
Yes.
feel like I another coach has said that to me, that clear is kind. And that's
Yes.
one of the mantras that I always think about, that it
Yes.
is very kind to other people if you can be really clear with them
Yes.
and
Yes.
yourself too.
I love that so much. And it's so important that people aren't mind readers and they don't know what we need. And most of the time, our family and friends really do want to make us happy and want us to be happy. And so if we can ask for what we need in that way, then most people are really willing to step in and do that for us. But we have to ask, and we can't assume that other people know and then get upset when they don't meet our needs.
I feel
Right?
like I see a lot of those Mother's Day posts when people are like, this person did this or that person did this and this person did nothing. And I have like very also lined it out for my
Yes.
family. I'm like, I want to go to Mother's Day brunch. Okay. And
Mhm.
so they know that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, and then they can choose if they don't want to do it or not. And I know my husband does not love Mother's Day brunch. So if it left to his own devices, it is not what he would choose. But again, as I said, I think again, it makes it easier. Like it would obviously make it easier for you and like you as a listener if somebody was clear, and then it would be up to you then to say yes or no, or explain why or why not, or what your
Mhm.
own needs are, and then hopefully come to a good resolution. But yeah, the book, it is everywhere, right? People can get it on Amazon. People can.
Yeah, it's on Amazon in paperback and ebook version. It's also available for purchase on my website in paperback. And I'm going to start recording an audio version as well. In a few months, that will be out.
That's amazing. I love reading, but I also love Audible or listening to stuff, especially when I travel. And I love always when authors read their own work.
I am reading my own words. So, yes, that's something that's really important to me.
That's incredible. Yeah, would you just tell us a little bit more about what's next for you? What kind of projects you're planning now that you've jumped in with 2 feet into full-time coaching. Like, what do you envision? What do you dream of? What's next for you?
Yeah. Really continuing to serve as many physicians as I can in whatever way that looks like. So I've done some speaking engagements and really enjoy doing that. And one-on-one and group coaching are the two main avenues that I have going on right now. Groups can be incredibly helpful for physicians to not feel alone, to have that sense of community, to connect with each other. And then one-on-one coaching, again, is just a really powerful way to begin to create that life that you love for yourself. And so those are my two main avenues to work with me. I'm just going to continue doing that. And hopefully I will continue to love it for as long as I can keep doing it, because I think the world needs coaches and the world needs more people who can serve. So yeah, I'm just excited to
So
serve physicians.
do you only work with physicians, or do you just mainly work with physicians?
Mainly physicians. I also work with, and it's really anybody in the medical profession. So
Okay.
nurse practitioner, physician assistants, dentists, podiatrists. I've had some physical therapists, some nurses. So yes, all medical
Okay,
professionals.
people in that. All right. So we're obviously going to link all of Laura's things, but just for somebody who wants to hear it also, it's the Purposeful MD. You have the same website, right? And talk a little bit about your podcast too, because I'm a podcast listener. Of course, you're listening to a podcast right now. You should definitely check out Laura's podcast, but tell us a little bit about some of the topics that you tackle on your podcast.
Yeah. So the Purposeful MD is my podcast, and I started it in January of this year. And I just really love talking to amazing people who want to serve physicians either in the same way as I do or just in different ways. So you and I have talked on my podcast. I just love connecting with really amazing individuals who are doing exciting things with their life. And it's a mix of guests. And then I also do have some solo episodes where I talk about things that are coming up for me, topics from my book, topics that I get asked frequently from my clients or people who just ask me, what's your favorite time management strategy or whatever that looks like. So it's a good mix on the podcast.
Thank you so much. Again, I hope you guys check out all of Laura Sutton's things. She is amazing. And thank you again so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Aesthetic Doctor Podcast with Dr. Judith Borger. We'd love to connect with you outside of the show. Follow Dr. Borger on Instagram at Dr. Borger and find more online and ways to work with Dr. Borger at www.theaestheticdoctor.com. Until next time, be well.